Hi, and welcome back to the European VC, the go-to podcast for everything European VC. If you love the show, share it with your friends and join our newsletter at eu.vc. Today, we're happy to welcome a real legend to the show, Reshma, co-founder and managing partner of Seedcamp. With Seedcamp, Reshma has not only pioneered seed stage investing in Europe, but also built what's become one of Europe's consistently highest performing funds. Consequently, we thought we had no choice but to dive deep with Reshma on firm building to tease out some learnings from one of the greats. If you enjoy our content, do support us by hitting the follow button, giving us a review, and following the European VC on LinkedIn. Vauban, a Qatar company, is now making it even easier to launch your angel syndicate with their new product called Atom. Angels provide first checks and are an integral component for founders to launch their businesses. With Atom, angels can band together to launch an SPV for $2,000 plus 2% of the raised capital, which is up to $200,000. There's lower fees, more deals, and more equity ownership in the best tech companies. Check it out at vauban.io/EUVC. And don't forget to mention EUVC.
Reshma, welcome to the European VC podcast. It is super nice to have you here today. How's everything?
Great to be here. It's good. I'm a little exhausted, I have to say. I've been traveling a lot, but yeah, very happy to be here.
Where have you been recently?
I was in London. I was in Paris. I was at I'm on the advisory board for my university, so I was back in Philadelphia, then now back home. So yeah, it's been quite a journey the last 10 days.
That must have been fun. We relate, Andreas and I have put a hold on all events and tech conferences for the rest of the year because we couldn't take it anymore. Super fun. It's super cool to see everyone, but it really takes a toll on your body, right?
Exactly. So no slush, huh, guys? I guess not for me either.
Not this year. I heard a rumor that they thought about canceling it because we weren't going, but I don't know if it's true. I'm kidding.
Love it.
Jokes aside, Reshma, it truly is a pleasure to have you here today. And, I don't think you need much introductions, but I always like to start the same way the episodes, which is asking our guests, how the hell did they break into this wonderful world of venture that we so much love? I'd love to ask you the same question. Give us a quick rundown. How did Reshma come to be the person and the professional that she is today?
Yeah, no, great. Given how old I am, it does go a long way back. But my undergraduate in engineering and business at University of Pennsylvania, so it really is a blueprint. Because I studied both concentrations as such. I was focused pretty equally on both. And then I went into banking, quickly realized I didn't like it. But I did work in venture capital back in the dot-com boom and bust. It therefore quickly got, things imploded. But so I got my taste of venture capital pretty early on. It was such a young firm. And so I kind of did everything. I was a lawyer in some days. I was deciding on investments some days. And this was all at a very young age. So I did feel, though, that wow, I have found what I want to do. The dot-com bust did happen. Over then the next few years, I went on to get my MBA and then work in operations in Vodafone. And so really worked across the entire European footprint, getting a lot of that kind of commercial marketing experience. And then I had this itch, though, around wanting to get back into venture. Wound up at a firm, got fired within 6 months. Ultimately, it was I had a lot of frustrations about watching the European scene unfold in technology and startups back in 2005, 6, 7, and fortunately met a few great people, like-minded people, and we got to it and started Seedcamp. As with, I think, the audience out there, your audience, as well as just startups in general, you never know how it's all going to turn out, but you just need to start. So that's what we did in 2007. But I did feel that I was meant to do this, as in I was meant to work in this area, kind of combining tech and business and investing.
Reshma, we love to ask the question, where the hell does your fund's name come from? And I have always thought Seedcamp must be something related to Basecamp, with you being, that's where you start and then you climb the peak. But tell us, what's the story there?
It's a great question. And I kind of, as an individual, inherited that name in the sense that, so Saul Klein, whose really brainchild this was, but I was able to join him at PowerPoint stage, so co-founded it together, but he had that name already down on a slide and you can't change it. Once it's on a slide, you can't change it. But we were fortunate. There was a guy named Jason Goodman who did a lot of work on Skype brand and then started his own agency. And he and his team put a bunch of hours into Seedcamp, the name and logo and colors and things as well. And I'm one of those people. I'm like, great, take it, let's go. So it's funny because camp, seed, like it's got a bunch of kind of attachments to that word, which don't necessarily match like where we are today. But we've really owned it. And I think we actually had our first actual camp in the woods this year, 15 years later. So
nice.
we've taken that brand on. It is a great question. It's like what you do, what you make of things. And we've taken that brand, embraced it to, as you said, kind of thinking about mountains and a journey and climbing and reaching the summit. And so we have Seed Summit, which is around kind of an angel platform. And so we've embraced this.
And Reshma, we promised you an episode where we talk about firm building, and we're already there, right? We're talking about brand building now. So let's start with that pillar. What are Reshma's core thoughts around brand building for all the guys and girls listening in saying, fuck, I'd love to learn and replicate what Seedcamp has done, because they have got quite a brand.
It's interesting, again, our own journey, 15 years, but I think I've just been very fortunate to have the advisory board I had at the beginning, the LPs we've had all to this day, listening to a lot of other people. Honestly, there's a lot of consistency in what people's advice is, what thoughts are. Ultimately, it is execution, but I'll go back to the essence of our firm. I think we've just had a really strong North Star. And Danny Reimer says, keep the main thing. And we've been really able to do that. Is we are extremely disciplined. We're extremely focused. We've really known our North Star since 2007. Of course, you evolve, the market evolves, the founder, talent itself evolves, but it hasn't changed from a core. We want to give European founders a real platform to global success and be one of the kind of global winners as such. And so what are the steps to get there? They're different today, or they've evolved today from 2007, but that's been a core objective. So we've not strayed from that into, do you want to start your brand in Asia? Do you want to start it in, Canada or wherever? It's like, nope, we're here for European founders to go global, and all the pathways and all the hard work we need to do to be part of currently the 9 unicorns we're a part of, but hopefully I want to get to my dirty dozen and then some, but to a dirty dozen. But yeah, so I think it's having that North Star and never getting sidetracked, never getting distracted.
I'd love to ask you if you have, how should I put this? So it's always, the brand lives, especially in VC, with the people that you have representing it. And it's, of course, we're all trying to get the best people and people who we believe, fit with the brand. But it's also a place where you have many acting not on their own, but each person has their own profile, has their own personality, and we also typically in VC encourage that and look for those strong personalities. But how do you make sure then with that you also always stay on brand? Meaning you want Seedcamp to be known for something. As an example, as an LP, we want everyone to know that we're always accessible and that we always give them a clear trajectory either to a yes or a no, and we don't leave them lingering. But it's also super difficult, and making sure that right now we're not too big, so it's not that much of a problem yet. But I see us, having that on many levels with new employees, making sure that they are true to what is our North Star. How have you thought about that, and what are those boundaries in terms of ensuring that people act on brand when it comes to Seedcamp?
Great question. We have been very thoughtful and considered in our 15-year journey around this and talent. And when we pitch to our own LPs, I sort of say to them, whether you invest in us or not, I hope you will walk away understanding how thoughtful we have been. And we can always disagree on the ultimate decision, but we've been very considered. And so for the first 3 years, I was executing on my own with a ton of help from, as mentioned, Saul, and he was at Index at the time, but Local Globe, and then the Index folks, as well as Vendrex and a few other names as well. So a huge amount of support from them, but I was executing on my own. And then 3 years in, when convinced Carlos to come on board, he was an LP in our fund. And I kind of had this shadow team of associates like me at my age group from each of these VCs who were LPs in our fund. And I was just really taking a lot of their free labor as LPs in my fund. But I think to say that when therefore he joined, we knew our values well. We had just been working together in that capacity. So we had a very joined up value system, implemented extremely differently. And we came at things from very different angles. He was more a practicing engineer. I was much more a practicing business person, kind of commercial strategy person. So we do apply our values in different ways, but at the core, a value system that had a similar vocabulary because we're all engineers, both engineers, similar vocabulary, similar way of thinking. So I think that that mattered a lot. The two of us were that kind of fundamental pieces of growing this platform. And then ever since then, I think we have recruited internally a lot into Sia and Tom. Particularly Sia was our intern, who's then grown into a partner with us. Tom actually was our fund lawyer, and then we brought him in, and he's grown. So he was not our intern, but we have kind of graduated our interns quite quickly into those senior positions. What's interesting though is like between our fund 2 and 3, we were advised by some of our LPs, our board, hey, why don't you get a grown-up? You two are still kind of young and you've grown up at Seedcamp. Why don't you get like a real grown-up? The thing about Seedcamp was we were trying to break a lot of bad habits on how venture capital in Europe was built to date. And, a lot of great firms, but a lot of bad habits as well. And so people we ran into, some amazing people, friends to this day, have supported us a ton, but just not that right fit into the culture we were building, the disruption we were trying to bring. So it was hard. It was hard to go against that advice. But actually we said, exactly kind of, we're not subject matter experts. Like Seedcamp builds a large base of the pyramid. We make 100 investments every fund, 30 to 40 companies every year. You need a different kind of a person to want to do that. And so we brought in a few people, and then actually a couple of them left and have done something else. They realized that is not what they want to be great at. And they've gone on to be great at what they do. So we built a lot of that growing up in our team. But it's tough. Like a lot of us have, grown up here, 7 years, Tom and Sia with us, 10 plus years, Carlos and I, Felix as well, a few years. So yeah, it's tough. And then our platform team, and we have something called Engine, we call it, but it's really our, fund management finance team. I think similar qualities on really through the interview process. Do you understand this job well enough? Like, do you get it? And it's different from other jobs, other interviews you're having. You must want to passionately believe in what we're building and think you will be excellent at this kind of a job. The pace of legals, the pace of finance, the pace of platform support. And again, building a platform where you are a connector. That's really important. So I think, to boil it all down, is we are a firm built around network effects and a flywheel. And you must kind of show this love of the flywheel, and then through the interview process, show us how you're going to input into and excelling that flywheel and not be something else. You're not going to be something else here. Everything then when you come in to your journey, whether you're with us a year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, everyone knows they're on that same path and a few key terms. We used to have our values are on our internal Notion page, and they're in 3 areas all around kind of problem solving, community building, teamwork. And then there's of course sub bullets, but as your team grows, no one remembers anything, right? And so we had to actually take the exercise making them 3 bullet points. That's all anyone remembers, but those are the 3 bullet points on values that, again, as a team of 20, we really kind of obsess over. And everything we do, we have our end of year reviews going on as well. And so the reviews are matched up to the 3 value drivers. So we've changed our review system as well. It's not like some generic thing. It's very tied to our values.
This is what I love about hosting this podcast, is when we have guests like you, Reshma, where we ask a question that most would need like 2 minutes to answer, and it will be a bunch of, honestly, mumbo jumbo. We've had many like those, but you give us quite a long answer, but I can see it in Andrea's eyes and my eyes. We have like 55 follow-up questions that were like struggling. Oh, fuck, we don't have enough time. So thank you.
I know, I literally had to stop. I was like, wait. But I think there were a lot of tangible items in there, right? And so
exactly. Yeah. And also Reshma spoke of Tom. We've interviewed Tom, and it was really funny. We spoke about his background and how it affects who he is as an investor. So you guys can check it out as well, the European VC podcast, Tom, Seedcamp, and you'll find it for sure. Reshma, I have to ask you about something you kind of briefly passed by, but that is extremely interesting for us and many of our listeners as well, which is the LP makeup. And you kind of hinted, in the early days especially, hinted to that many of these people that were helping you, they're actually LPs. And my mind goes into automatically thinking, okay, it's an LP network, and you're allowing for probably smaller tickets to have these individuals. I would love to hear, your reasoning around that. And I think more interesting for me is, how has that changed over time, right? Because typically what I see, at least, is it's quite common for Fund 1 to do stuff like that. And then over time, they stop doing it. They kind of move away from that. How has Seedcamp evolved on that front, and how do you think about smaller LPs in your LP base?
I think if you kind of keep that flywheel image in mind, is like everyone in there matters and must contribute. Otherwise, we are going to kick you out any which way you talk about it, whether it's our founders or LPs or team. So we do have an obsession over excellence and being exceptional across every bit. So going back to your question on LPs, is funny enough, it started as a necessity is the mother of invention. And so back when we raised our first fund, it was 2.5 million euros. Here we are today deploying our fifth fund, which is at 80 million pounds. So you can see this journey. Folks like you guys or institutional investors are like, 2.5 million, I can't get out of bed for that. And then this isn't interesting, right? And so really it was going to be the angels and some of the VCs themselves who prescient to think, hey, we need this base of pyramid that Seedcamp is trying to build here, and we must contribute into that, right? But what came out of that was because they weren't institutional, you didn't have all this baggage. So what are the negatives? Oh, it wasn't institutional, so I can't raise big money. But what's the good? So I mean, you get in our DNA, because we're problem solvers, engineers by nature too, it's often like, fine, this we can't have, but then what are we getting out of it, right? And so what I did end up seeing, and because they were associates kind of told, you go do this, like you go to Seedcamp, go help her, right? And it was like, awesome. They're in their own firms with their own politics. Seedcamp's this like breath of fresh air for these folks. So I just thought, hey, here's a wallet of time I can tap into. They've given me their wallet of money, now the time. So constantly just being like, can you judge these applications? Can you score? Can you be in my room to help me evaluate? And we were actually not regulated. We were an investment club. So, okay, we're not regulated, couldn't have the ego, I'm deciding on these companies. But fine, what I actually got was a bunch of smart people who, knew that I'm the executive of this firm. So therefore, they're going to, as an investment club, input and score. But, it's that collaborative effort. So I looked a lot into what am I getting with what am I not, forgetting about what I'm not getting out of the makeup of my LPs. And it proved a big USP, a big differentiator, one of our secret like weapons as well. And so we kept that going. And our second fund was 5 million. So still small, right? Third fund, it gets into more institutional. So we just kept it. And I think the other key was like, guys, let's keep you always at that 2.5 million level, kind of out of the 5 as well. And so over fund 3, 4, 5, you guys added amazing practical value. So let's keep it going, and they have. And so, yeah, it's been awesome to get their wallet of time, much more importantly than their wallet of money. So we've been very thoughtful of that. So that was our own LP base of pyramid. So everything, like, also we think a lot of as a pyramid or a tree. I start using that more. Is like how branches and how does everyone help each other. And so on top of that, then we built EIF or the British Patient Capital or some family offices, corporate VC. Build. Yeah. They're not consistent. You get a new CEO, a new team, and it's like we were doing CVC, but we're dropping that, or we weren't, and now we're adding it. And I'm like, nah, consistency is what's been core to us. So we're kicking them all out except one of them. So because they have been consistent. So yeah, we've been very thoughtful.
I'd love to ask Reshma, because you said there, okay, 2.5 million. Okay, so that's the dollar amount or euro amount here. How about number of people and how, because we have all of our listeners are thinking about their LP base and 2.5 million. What does that translate into number of people and also the makeup of it? What have you kind of, seen that these are the categories that have added the most value? I think that's very interesting for people to hear.
So our first fund was like 20 plus LPs. Our second and third fund, it exploded in a good way of number. So it is hard to manage. And then what we've done more recently is have a minimum ticket to be in the fund. It's still a large number. I think we're at 80 plus. And then for our founders, we know the hurdle to invest in our fund is larger. So, if they are a less than 100K ticket, we group them into seeders. And so we innovated with seeders on that. And now a lot of funds are using, so seeders loved it, right? We were the guinea pig. And then because of our brand, other funds are like, well, Seedcamp did it. We're gonna do it too, right? And so these win-wins, you look for with new tools. So we've evolved with the kind of tools that have grown up as well for us to do. But yeah, I think the one thing we did with our large number of LPs is put in a discipline around the behaviors we would accept and the behaviors we wouldn't accept. Having exceptional people around you, fortunately, angels and VCs themselves, is they don't have time to waste either. So the discipline worked mutually well, right? Is I only went to them with crucial things that I knew. What do they care? Like, you always got to know your customer. My LPs are my customers. Our team is our customer. Our founders are our customers. Like, what does that customer base want? they wanted deals. Yes, there's altruism, of course, but there's only so much time VCs have for altruism, right? And angels too. It's like, I want to write a bigger check into the next potential unicorn, right? Hopefully Seedcamp is good enough to help build these unicorns. But so it's like keeping that in mind, I went with very disciplined asks and keeping it in mind that they're exceptional. They came to me with discipline, so they did not waste time with just reporting for reporting's sake or whatnot. So that's what we've done, is communicating what the behaviors mutually are to keep being able to manage that LP base. We've also offered liquidity to our LPs where we can, well before the 10-year life, right? Within 3 years, within 5 years. And if it turned out you and us didn't match in our expectations, great, here's a way for you to get some liquidity. So that's helped get some folks off of our own cap table with great returns for them. So they're super happy. But so we've done a bunch of these things, but make no mistake, like you really do need to communicate well and manage this large LP base in an extremely disciplined way.
And then on the types or categories of people, you've mentioned other VCs. I do believe that those have primarily been follow-on VCs, so people that come in rounds later than you. And then what other profiles have proven super valuable?
So in the name, particularly angels, I would say, and if you look on SlideShare, we put up our fundraising decks just to be useful and helpful. And it's funny, you'd think it's like, oh, the secrets. And, it's like, well, actually what I love is new fund managers coming back into our flywheel. Like, does it benefit our flywheel to put this information out there? Is it also altruistic? Win-win, But yeah, so you'll see in maybe our older fundraising decks, we do categorize our LPs, and the angels have been vastly useful, but we didn't take kind of money really from people who'd made their own money in real estate or just in finance, or we really, it was like, oh, did you make money in tech? Are you either software or fine if it's health tech, fin tech, real estate tech, as long as, so the angels were very useful. And they wanted to really mentor. They want to stay. So our mentoring is really interesting too. Again, people are like, why would you have them? Why were they giving up their time? It's like, they're not giving their time because of altruism. Again, of course, there's a layer of it. But really, angels, because they were tech operators usually, they want to stay current. What are new products? What are new founders? What's new, languages? What are people building in, right? And so, again, it's to their benefit. But yeah, angels have been super helpful. We've had founders of Skyscanner, those trade up, like those early tech stories out of Europe, and they gave a lot of their time and energy and cash, money as well, writing those checks. So, but the VCs, we also did a layering of VCs. We have seed VCs who we co-invest with as we built up seed alongside our pre-seed, and then we have the follow-on VCs as well, and then some of that growth capital.
What about founders? Now that you're Fund 5, soon to be Fund 6, is that something that you're also seeing in this kind of flywheel model you're talking about?
Exactly. So, the founder of UiPath, Daniel Dinest, he's become an LP in our fund. Tavit at Wise, he's become. So absolutely. And again, you won't necessarily always be the highest contributor with the most amount of money. So that's the Seeders group is really just our founders and our team as well. We of course have our GP commit, but all our team are welcome to also invest in the fund itself. So Seeders captures our founders whose entry ticket might be smaller, but what they are amazing at, because they're in far-flung geographies, Paris as well as, so, you're a star away from London, but Paris as well as Warsaw, or some of them have moved to the US, amazing for deal flow. Yeah. Actually, one of our angel LPs, we've done 17 co-investments with. Wow. Won't share his name. And then, too good, it's our secret, And then one of our founders in Paris, I think we've done 11 or so. Just some crazy number. Like he, again, constantly is feeding us deal flow. The other thing I did want to mention is on team building, people have said to us, man, you guys hire well. And so the contrarian view for us was, it's great when people leave Seedcamp. They're coming in as interns, usually as interns. And it's like, it's fantastic for them to leave Seedcamp. We're always going to be a small org. But, Ricardo's gone on to become partner at 0.9. Other than Ricardo's gone on to partner being at Target. Vincent went on to start Kima, huge, right, for the Paris scene and our connectivity. And their experiences were so amazing. And we're a launch pad for their next big role as well. There's a lot of positive mindset towards Seedcamp. So a lot of sharing of that deal flow, right? So yeah, it was contrarian to think, we want to foster people leaving our company.
We'll just say thanks because we're really enjoying working with two former Seedcamp persons quite closely. So thanks a million, Reshma. We can only double down on your value add to the community there.
Exactly. Reshma, I wanted to ask you something that you hinted to before when you were talking about consistency, not only inside of Seedcamp but in the LP base and their behavior as well, and how that led you to make some tough decisions, I imagine, on corporate LPs. Let's put it like that. I get nervous. Context. There's clearly, maybe less so today, but there's been clearly a boom in people raising funds, solo GPs, micro VCs, and we love it. We're probably part of that trend ourselves even. But I always get worried when I see kind of these first time, sometimes solo GPs, whatever, getting a bit in these tough situations where I feel they're somewhat kind of getting themselves in a position where there's too many strings attached, and that puts into question the sustainability of the firm in the long run. And, you're on soon Fund 6, right? And I'd love to ask, if you were to think back into Fund 1, Fund 2 and your learnings and maybe some of the mistakes, but with this backdrop of, it's not about only building a VC firm, it's about building a sustainable VC firm that can outlast you ideally.
Yes. And we faced some of those strings as well that would have catapulted us into larger funds, and we didn't. So whether it's someone wanting to be part of the GP, some of the other sort of country attachments or other, sector, all of that. And it was hard to say no, because again, you could have had that larger fund. It's hard to operate on a 2.5 million, a 5 million, even a 20 million, right? I still think they are good problems to have when fundamentally you had the judgment or the platform to attract great founders to come want your money, then the judgment to make those decisions, and then the support system. So I still rather have the problems of don't have enough money to like continue to invest in some of these companies versus exactly what you said is patching up in the short term, or getting into some of these entanglements, which really come to bite you a few years down the road. So go back to that, like, what is our North Star? If we, of course, can't have enough money to invest in a company, that's a problem. But what we've always done is like, we've gotten sponsorships from, Google, Microsoft, Stripe, like players like that who really wanted to be supportive. We've made things, work, which fed the flywheel towards the North Star, but other things we've just said no to. But, sometimes we do wonder, like, what if we had expanded our brand into other geographies? What if we had grown the team more? What if? Hopefully we were, smart in that journey in staying disciplined to, as you said, building that 15-year sustainable firm, and then long-term, hopefully another 15 years and 20 years down the road.
Most VC firms, so I'd almost say, have done opportunity funds this last year. Now I think some of them would have wished they had, saved some LP dry powder for their Fund 4 or Fund 5 or whatever number they're on, rather than do an opportunity fund. I'd love to hear your thinking around that.
Great point. And it goes all the way back to firm building as well. We did not raise opportunity funds, but we did build, I say 40, 50 SPVs, basically, some with just one LP or someone who's not an LP necessarily as well. But so we made them discrete, vehicles, right? Which you can measure their IRR, their ROI. It's discrete capital. And we kept the core. So actually what we've done more recently is we have a pool of capital that a new colleague of ours, Hillary in New York, is managing, but we separated it out. And if she decides she wants to raise a larger amount from that pool of capital, it's just 50 million to grow it. It's her strategy. It's her butt on the line. It's her future. It's more icing on the cake for us in a sense, but the core is what we're driven by. And we talk about this in our fundraising as well. So you keep, we're extremely good with our team, and that's partly the managing partner role Carlos and I have to play, is keep the team extremely focused and disciplined. So our core team knows that the life begins and ends with access to the best founders, and the judgment we're building around making the decisions on who the best founders matching up with Seedcamp are, and then ultimately getting to those kind of unicorn, right? And follow-on funding, and who's coming in for that follow-on funding into our companies. And, there's certainly a correlation towards then the journey to that kind of billion, 5 billion, 10 billion mark as such. So, but I just don't want any of our team distracted, including me. So we kept our core is what we obsess over. And then Hillary can think about building the icing on the cake for us. So we did separate it out. And we thought a lot about remuneration, or not for that matter, and any income, and then carry and things like that. So again, very thoughtfully designed for the long term. A lot of what we do is we iterate and then set up a structure. So we experiment, we iterate. Like we built SPVs on AngelList. We built them with our own law firm. We've like built them in all sorts of ways. We learned a ton, learned what doesn't, it's hard. SPVs are hard. Opportunity funds are easier. You have a captive, pool of capital. But to your point, we've had a lot of benefit from SPVs because we're not in this sort of like captive pool of capital. Because if there's not opportunities, then what's the point? So again, we looked at like what are the good things we get out of going our way, and then double click on those, hyper build on those pros rather than the cons, and maybe making some of those decisions.
And how, Reshma, have you thought about inviting your LP base into those SPVs? Has it always been clear cut, or have you also iterated on that model?
Yeah, we sort of, what we do is whatever fund that company's in, we first prioritize the LPs in there, and then broadening out. But again, expected
and after pro rata.
Yeah, after our investment's done. And again, it's expected behaviors is like, hey, you're gonna have to move fast. You're gonna have to do it based on this level of information or not. And so we built up some of those processes as we worked with a few LPs more or less. But same thing is like, we're at the mercy of these amazing founders who are raising their next few rounds with whoever, and we're just going to have to move this way. If you don't want to, no stress. We don't have to do it together, but then we'll go ask someone else, right? So we have spelled out working behaviors on even the SPVs from the beginning.
Yeah. That's really, really good to hear you say that, Reshma. Earlier today, I was talking with Andreas about how to deal with some difficult investors in our SPVs. And so it's very nice to have your take, because our decision was exactly the same. These are long relationships. Why the hell should I bother? It doesn't matter how big the ticket is, right? I'm going to have to deal with this, at least in our case, 7 years, right? Like, why the fuck would I want to deal with this guy or girl for that amount of time? Right?
Absolutely. Because what are you keep hearing me beat the drum of like, you go back to the first principles is like, what are you in it for? If you want a quick flip, you'll certainly implement certain behaviors and strategies. And if you're here trying to build companies that are hopefully at least 10, 20 years old at a certain point, maybe 100 years old. But if that's what your goal is, if you're building a 20-year firm, a 40-year firm, your actions are going to be very different. Your strategy is going to be very different from a lot of quick fixes for money.
Absolutely. Reshma, we are unfortunately running out of time. And we are going to do, yes, it's sad, at least for us. We're going to do a special one. So as usual to our listeners, we're going to end with a quick fire round, but not as usual. I don't know if that works in English. It worked in my head. We're going to have someone different doing the quick fire round. So we're going to have our good friend JD from Pace Notes, who Reshma also knows quite well, to do the quick fire round. Reshma, are you ready for the quick fire?
Yes, I'm prepared. No, because there's no preparation. It's a quick fire. All right,
Exactly. So now's the part where we'll change my voice with a much sexier Dutch sounding word. But the first question is,
which VC that you know has a superpower, and what is it?
Yes, I have a few examples because I was lucky enough to be mentored by so many. But I think folks like Sonali, Danny, Jan at Indexes as well come to mind. I think there are many routes to being excellent in venture. Jan is amazing at relationship forming with his founders. I mean, he goes all in. Not necessarily is that a recipe for everyone else. Sonali is amazing she just has this kind of her head in what matters and signal from noise. Like her ability to really understand signal from noise is amazing. Danny, Figma, latest example, sort of, I think both firm building, he's a great example of that firm building as well as his own personal kind of judgments he makes. And man, that track record, that's not luck, right? Like that's talent. So, I think again, I've watched him kind of manage his time over time and being very careful about where he puts his time. So various superpowers. Carlos as well, my partner, is amazing at dissecting any technology out there to fundamentals. I mean, he's a proper engineer. I sort of, moonlight with it. But yeah, founders are blown away. Like in these pitch meetings, they're like, yes, you nailed it. And he's able to translate some of that founder speak into business and what'll be the impact at a global scale. And when you're pitching to us, you're like, that's who I want, on my team, right? So exactly. Look, these are very different superpowers. Carlos would say about me, like the way I can keep a network in my head. He's like, I don't understand how you do that. And I'm constantly connecting people as dots. So very different ways to get to.
It's so funny. Sorry for interrupting you there, Reshma. It's so funny you say that. We've met Carlos in Bucharest, so not that long ago. And we've crossed paths a couple of times in these tech events. And I would actually say he's been super good at that network approach that you're saying he would say about you, because he's been introducing us to many, many people and really building some really interesting bridges. So I can only guess that it's rubbing off him as well a bit, your approach.
Yeah, actually, Reshma, he has what you might dub the Houdini introducer, because he might just pop up for 10 seconds, say, you should meet this guy, and then all of a sudden he's gone again.
He's gone.
I think that's an interesting approach.
I love that.
I gotta tell him that.
I actually love that. Reshma, second question in my Dutch accent.
In your view, what is the essence of venture capital and how do you relate to that as a firm?
Ultimately, you are a fund manager. You are an employee of your LPs as such, right? So look, you got to return money. Fortunately, I was educated deeply into the power of IRRs, ROI as well as IRRs. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm worried for your audience. So that's your job at the end of the day. And then it's the how. How do we relate that to the firm? It is the flywheel I've talked about for our firm. It really works to our model. What we again pitch to our LPs is, if you do your DD in us, you'll see we've connected our model with our team, with our what matters at the end of the day, with our relationships with LPs, founder. Like everything makes sense connected. Each piece might not make sense, but when you connect it all up, you go, oh, like the puzzle, right? And you're like, oh wow, that should deliver excellence, which we've been fortunate to be able to deliver. But yeah, venture capital, whatever anyone says, like you're a fund manager and you're returning money to money, and that's your job.
Yeah. Third question.
What are you as a firm consistently good at and why?
We're good at being disciplined and remaining focused, and we're good at doing that as a group of our 20 of us, but then even our broader base of who we think is Seedcamp Nation. So we really are now at a size where it can be the nation, which is our LPs, the thousands of employees at our companies. So yeah, founders, mentors, our experts in residence, our venture partner. It's hard as you scale to keep focus and discipline. And I think we're very good at that. By the way, this is not an easy thing. So we're not good at it because it's easy. Like it is a journey. It's difficult. 2021 was difficult for us because we grew into nation in a big way. It was a term we've used, but I think it really came to life even more last year. We went through a lot of difficult internal conversations and tool kitting of like putting a lot of things in place to make sure we retain that ability that we're so good at with focus.
Fourth and final question, and this one would be incredibly hard for me to answer. So I'm very curious.
Which firm do you consider to be the most promising emerging manager?
It's a really mean question. We're friends with so many. I'll just tell you, friends with, impressed by, just visionaries out of Germany. Their pace of development as a firm and what they've been involved with, really amazing. Actually, they came out of La Famiglia, and so La Famiglia too is really impressive. I think we're LPs in Declan's fund, Tiny VC as well, which is an ex-Seedcamp. So there you go. You see my biases here, but what I like, and I've been working with JD on Pace Notes as well, is like, hey, why do you exist as a manager? What is that uniqueness? Why should anyone care? And I think the firms I've just mentioned, especially I've mentioned two in Germany, right, is like Point9's been established, but these guys, there's a need in the German market and they've emerged and they play, the way they talk about their brands just makes a heck of a lot of sense, right? Tiny VC has its own role. They're very clear about kind of what they stand for. So yeah, I think where you see is I'm impressed by people who I can clearly be like, why the fuck do you exist? Why do you matter? So yeah, so I'm impressed by that kind of, whether you're in Dublin or London or wherever you're starting things up. Kima's, they're not emerging, but there you go. I'm super impressed by what Kima's done over the years.
Reshma, thank you so much for joining us. And an even bigger thanks for at the 48th minute or so of our recording, ending up actually saying the F word, getting an American to say the F word on something that's recorded. Either you've gone to actually be European or or we just had a good time.
I curse all the time, literally.
I'm so happy you did it in the end.
Not a good thing. Trying to stop.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the European VC, the go-to podcast for everything European VC. If you love the show, share it with your friends and join our newsletter at eu.vc. Vauban, a Qatar company, is now making it even easier to launch your Angel Syndicate with their new product called Atom. Angels provide first checks and are an integral component for founders to launch their businesses. With Atom, Angels can band together to launch an SPV for $2,000 plus 2% of the raised capital, which is up to $200,000 US. There's lower fees more deals, and more equity ownership in the best tech companies. Check it out at vaban.io/EUVC. And don't forget to mention EUVC.